Nathan, hello.
How you going?
All right, man. Thank you very much for inviting us down.
Very welcome.
Lovely place. It's nice to be in when it's closed. Feels a bit like we're being backstage.
Yeah, it's a bit like that, nice and quiet.
And look at this view. I mean, that's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, no, we're very, very lucky to have that. You take it for granted sometimes, but you know, it's you pinch yourself sometimes. Some days it's just beautiful. Well, today it's beautiful, but it's just a bit rough.
So how long have you been down here then? How long have you been in Cornwall?
So I first came to Cornwall when I was about 19 years old, so I'm 44 now. And I came to work for Rick Stein at the seafood restaurant in Padstow. And then I just sort of, the only time we've really moved away from Cornwall was for a couple of years when my wife and I wanted to get a bit of experience up country. But other than that, for the last sort of 20 odd years, we've been in Cornwall.
Well, let's go back even further then. How did your journey within hospitality start?
So I'm born into it. I had no choice.
Okay.
So my dad he's a chef, and my grandparents were all in the industry, and my mum also did a bit, waitressing and stuff. But she's so I've really only ever known hospitality. So it's in my blood, and I completely love the industry. I think it's a great industry. It's always done well for me. You have to work hard, but I love it. So and to this day, I sort of get out of bed and don't think I'm really working, which is great.
Which is what we all strive for, isn't it? So back in the day, was it your dad kind of making you collect glasses or wash pots? Was that the first foray into it? Yeah,
well, I started basically on Saturday mornings. So he would have to go in and do breakfast on Saturday morning for where he was working. And I would go in with him about 9 years old, and I'd do things like tray up bread for toast, or I'd butter bread for sandwiches, all little things like that. Arrange the fridge or whatever he needed just to assist him. And I just loved the sort of like the teamwork effort part of it. That's what got me into it, really. Not so much the cooking, it was the influence of a good team around you and feeling part of something. And I think that's the same with any team, whether you're in football, whether you're anything. But when you get a really good hospitality business with a lovely team, it's infectious, and when you feel like you belong. And I think that's what made me sort of pursue it. How
did you find the industry back then? I mean, there's always talk about conditions for chefs, people working in kitchens. How was hospitality for you going through those years? Well,
I think the first sort of part of it was quite nice, because I'd obviously working with my dad, and then even though he was tough on me, because he didn't really want me to do it, so he tested me, he'd make me do all the really nasty jobs, the things that weren't great. But it was all so that he was then, when he realised that I was into it, he was like, okay, now I support you, let's go and do it. So I went off to college. I went to a college called Thanet College in Broadstairs, which is now called East Kent College, I think. And I did a 2-year course, and I was classically trained. So the way we learned there was all the French terminology, the French repertoire of dishes, and all the stages with the service were all very, very classical. So very sort of like fine dining, that sort of stuff.
Escoffier type.
Yeah, so not really. Yeah, it was all Escoffier. We even had French lessons. So it was that sort.
Really?
And it was great. It was great. But you learn nothing really about any other cultures, about any other cuisines. But that was what was happening at that point. In the industry, this was sort of like the early 90s. It was still the 5-star hotels you had to go and work in, which I did. That's my first thing I did after I left college. And you went and trained in those places as a commis chef, and then you sort of went through the ranks. And it was very much that party system, which is like you got your head chef, your sous chef, your junior sous chef, chef de partie, commis. So you were taught that, and you were sort of told to go and do that. But now, I think the industry is way more diverse, and I think you can do, if you've got an interest in any cuisine, from anywhere, you can go and pursue it at a really high level.
We hear a lot at the moment about restaurants not being able to find staff, that there is an employment crisis within the industry. What's your take on that? What are your views?
Well, looking at the industry as a whole, it clearly is an issue. There's obviously gaps in kitchens and front of house, because it's been well publicised and it's out there. But I think it's just sort of like it does also depend on employers. You got to ask yourself, are you a good employer? I would say for a young person, find do as many interviews as you possibly can before you make a decision, and then find a kitchen culture or a restaurant culture or a hotel culture where you feel like you belong. I think the actual staffing crisis, I mean, it's clearly part of that is through, the Brexit part of it is a big impact. We all know that. And it's not just the hospitality industry, it's other industries. But I do also think it's about, some people in the past might have just been not a great place to work, and I think that's it as well.
How do you see the future, Nathan? The future for hospitality? Are we in good shape, do you think? Are the problems around the corner?
I think the industry will step up,
Yeah.
and I think the hospitality industry will step up because it does always. The one thing about hospitality is that we always make it happen.
Yeah.
So I believe that there's good people in the industry, across the world and certainly in the UK. And I think that people will get together and we'll make sure that the foundations are there for an industry that brings people into it, trains them properly, looks after them, pays them well, and obviously they get the reward from where they're working. And I believe that will happen because it can't go the other way. If it goes the other way, what have we got? People love to eat and drink too much. Human beings love it. So, if hospitality industry is we're basically the saviour of mankind. You don't eat well. But if you don't eat well, and you don't drink well, and you don't have fun, what's the point? I personally support Hospitality Rising because I believe that the future for the hospitality industry is strong, and I want to bring young people into it to fulfill their dreams. I think it's really important for others to get involved in Hospitality Rising. If you're part of the hospitality industry, you should be involved. It's about bringing people into the hospitality industry for a great future and a great career.